Collapse is not an accident. Collapse is destiny. Every empire, every faith, every ideology, every truth you clutch like a lifeline is already rotting from the moment of its birth. The philosophy of collapse is merciless because it does not whisper comfort. It declares the inevitable. Everything you believe will fail. Not some things, not the weak things, not the corrupt things. Everything. The illusion of permanence is humanity's favorite drug. We convince ourselves that this time is different, that our institutions will endure, that our truths are eternal, that our values will resist time's corrosion. But history is a cemetery of certainties. The Roman Empire believed itself eternal. The Church claimed it held absolute truth forever. Monarchs declared their divine right. Communists swore their revolution would end history. Liberals proclaimed the end of ideology. And all of them, without exception, fell. Their ruins are our inheritance. Thomas Hobbes, Machiavelli, Nietzsche, Spengler, all saw this in their own ways. Hobbes understood that freedom collapses into slavery. Machiavelli knew that republics rot into tyranny. Nietzsche declared that even God himself had collapsed under the weight of disbelief. Spengler described civilizations as organisms, born, growing, decaying, dying. Collapse is not failure. It is life. Collapse is the natural end of every structure we worship. But here is the deeper cruelty. We do not just live in collapsing systems. We build them knowing they will fall. Every constitution, every ideology, every philosophy is a fragile dam against the flood of entropy. And entropy always wins. You may believe in progress, in reason, in justice, but these are temporary myths, necessary myths, but myths nonetheless. Like scaffolding around a building already condemned, they give the illusion of safety while time prepares the demolition. Why does collapse happen? Not because of accidents, not because of flaws in design. Collapse happens because the very things that give a system strength also guarantee its death. Empires expand until their weight breaks them. Religions codify rules until they strangle themselves. Economies grow until they crash under their own complexity. Identities harden until they shatter from within. What makes something powerful is exactly what ensures it will eventually fail. This is why collapse is not a tragedy but a law. You cannot build something eternal because eternity is the enemy of life. Everything alive must decay. And what is a civilization, a belief system, an identity, if not a living thing? It grows, it consumes, it resists, and eventually, it dies. To demand permanence is to demand what nature itself forbids. But humanity cannot accept this. We crave permanence. We want truths that do not shift, structures that do not fall, beliefs that will not betray us. And so we cling. We chant slogans. We pledge allegiance. We swear faith. We imagine that by shouting loud enough, we can silence the whisper of collapse. And yet collapse comes anyway, indifferent to our screams. The ruins of history are full of ghosts that once believed they were immortal. Walk through Athens and hear the echo of philosophers who thought their reason eternal. Walk through the Vatican and remember that even the eternal city has been sacked. Walk through Moscow and hear the promises of revolution that ended in bureaucratic decay. Walk through Wall Street and watch the skyscrapers tremble every decade when illusions of infinite growth crack. Everywhere you look, permanence has already failed. And here lies the darker truth. Collapse is not always sudden. It is often slow, invisible, creeping. The fall begins long before the crash. The rot begins in silence. Rome did not fall in a day. Its people were still praising Rome's eternity centuries after its soul had already collapsed. The Soviet Union looked invincible a year before it vanished. Collapse is like cancer, invisible until it devours the whole body. By the time you see it, it has already been happening for years. So why study collapse? Because only by staring into its abyss can you stop being fooled by illusions. Collapse teaches clarity. Collapse strips away sentiment. Collapse reveals that the systems you worship are scaffolds, not gods. Once you see this, you stop being a slave to permanence. You stop being surprised when idols fall. You stop wasting your faith on fragile structures. Instead, you begin to move differently, with cold realism, with adaptability, with the strength to survive ruins instead of trying to prevent them. This is the lesson of the philosophy of collapse. You will not stop the fall, but you can learn to dance inside it. You can learn to build, not with the hope of eternity, but with the awareness of fragility. You can learn to treat every belief, every ideology, every institution as temporary scaffolding. Useful, perhaps even beautiful, but never sacred. Collapse frees you when you accept it. And here is where you must decide. Will you cling to illusions and die with them? Or will you strip yourself bare and learn to stand in the ruins? Collapse is not waiting for you in the future. Collapse is here, right now, in every system already cracking, in every truth already trembling. You do not live in stability. You live in the middle of a collapse that has not finished yet. Comment below. What do you see collapsing already in your lifetime? Governments, religions, truths, even your own beliefs. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the forbidden side of philosophy, the side that doesn't comfort but exposes. Like this, if you've ever felt the ground shift under your certainties. Share this with someone who still believes their truths are eternal, and watch how their face changes. Because collapse is not coming, collapse has already begun. Collapse does not strike from the outside like lightning. Collapse grows from within. The seeds of destruction are planted the moment a belief, an empire, a system is born. What appears as strength is often the very mechanism of decay. What looks like stability is only momentum on its way to ruin. This is the cruel paradox of existence. Every system is both self-creating and self-destroying. Its virtues rot into vices. Its strengths become weaknesses. Its victories carry the blueprint of defeat. You do not need enemies to bring down your civilization. You do not need a rival ideology to kill your truth. You carry the infection inside. The collapse is not invasion. The collapse is suicide. Take Rome. Its expansion gave it wealth, armies, glory. But expansion also stretched it thin, corrupted its politics, made luxury a poison. The empire devoured itself under the weight of its own appetite. Rome's strength guaranteed its death. Or consider Christianity. Its faith spread across continents, conquering with devotion. But that spread also fractured it. Each sect, each schism, each reform carried a piece of the collapse within it. The very growth of the church was the guarantee of its fragmentation. This is how collapse works. Success multiplies complexity. Complexity multiplies fragility. What begins as triumph ends as burden. Systems cannot resist their own success. They choke on it. The more they grow, the less they can breathe. And so collapse begins, slow at first, hidden in bureaucracies, rituals, dogmas, contradictions. The surface shines while the foundation rots. Philosophy itself is not spared. Every doctrine that begins as rebellion against illusion becomes illusion itself. Stoicism began as a philosophy of freedom in the face of chaos, but later hardened into rigid moral preaching. Christianity began as revolt, then became empire. Liberalism began as resistance to tyranny, then became the justification for markets and surveillance. Marxism began as liberation of workers, then became gulags and secret police. Every belief turns into its opposite. Collapse is not failure of philosophy. Collapse is its destiny. Nietzsche understood this. He said, "Every idol eventually becomes a corpse." What he meant is that ideas once worshipped stop being alive. They fossilize into dogma, and dogma collapses because it cannot move. The idol becomes too heavy, too sacred, too untouchable. It cannot adapt, and so it shatters. Collapse is the revenge of life against what refuses to change. Why does this happen? Because permanence is impossible in a world of flux. Heraclitus already taught that everything flows, everything changes. To resist this is to resist existence itself. Every system tries to fight change, tries to fix itself in eternity. And that act of defiance is what kills it. What does not bend, breaks. What does not adapt, collapses. And yet humans cling harder. We write laws in stone, thinking stone will save us. We canonize truths, thinking sanctity will protect them. We build constitutions as if they are immortal, forgetting that paper burns, forgetting that even stone crumbles. We refuse to accept fragility, so fragility destroys us. Collapse is the revenge of time against arrogance. Look at modernity. Technology promises progress eternal, infinite growth, endless improvement. But technology multiplies complexity. Complexity multiplies fragility. The internet promised freedom, but gave birth to surveillance. Social media promised connection, but delivered addiction and manipulation. Globalization promised prosperity, but created fragility so vast that one disruption topples entire economies. Progress is not the escape from collapse. Progress is the acceleration of collapse. Do not think your personal beliefs escape this pattern. Your identity is a system too, and it contains collapse within it. You believe in principles, values, truths that define you, but they too will rot. The strength of your belief becomes its weakness. The harder you cling, the more brittle it becomes. What you refuse to question becomes the thing that betrays you. Every identity eventually fractures under its own rigidity. Collapse is not only for empires, collapse is for you. This is the hidden law. Collapse is not the opposite of growth. Collapse is the final stage of growth. Every climb ends in a fall. Every creation carries its destruction inside it. You cannot escape this. You can only recognize it. And yet most people live in denial. They imagine collapse comes from betrayal, from invasion, from corruption. No. Collapse is baked into the structure from the beginning. When the collapse comes, it is not a surprise. It is a revelation. It shows what was already true all along, that nothing you believe is permanent, that everything you worship is temporary, that everything you build is condemned. So what does this mean for you? It means you must stop trusting permanence. You must stop clinging to the illusion that your truths, your systems, your values will endure. They will not. Instead, you must learn to see collapse everywhere. See the cracks forming, see the rot spreading, see the inevitable fall already happening. Collapse teaches you to move lightly, to adapt, to refuse the weight of idols. Comment below. What systems do you see rotting already? Political, religious, personal? Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering the forbidden truths philosophy tries to bury. Like this if you have ever watched something you trusted collapse in front of you. Share this with someone who still believes their ideology is eternal, and remind them, collapse is not coming. Collapse is already inside. Because everything that lives will fail, and everything you believe is already dying. Collapse is not only political, not only historical, not only civilizational. Collapse is personal. The ruin you fear in nations and empires is already happening inside you. The same law that topples gods and governments dismantles your identity, your beliefs, your values, and even the story you tell yourself about who you are. You are not immune. You are the proof. Every human being builds an inner empire. We construct it with convictions, morals, and truths. We call it character, or self, or identity. We imagine it is solid. But the philosophy of collapse tells us your inner empire will also fall. Not by invasion, not by betrayal, but by its own design. The collapse is already inside you. Think of your childhood beliefs. Once you swore they were absolute. Maybe you believed in a God, or in justice, or in goodness, or in the certainty of your family. And yet, with time, cracks appeared. The God grew silent. Justice failed. Family fractured. What once seemed eternal became fragile. The collapse of childhood faith was not an accident. It was inevitable. You outgrew it, and in outgrowing it, you destroyed it. The same pattern repeats throughout your life. You invent values to anchor yourself: honesty, loyalty, hard work, love. But each value, once hardened, begins to rot. Honesty becomes cruelty, loyalty becomes blindness, hard work becomes slavery, love becomes obsession. What you once cherished becomes the weapon that wounds you. The collapse is not betrayal. The collapse is transformation. Every truth you cling to becomes poison when time mutates it. This is why Nietzsche declared that convictions are prisons. Every belief is a cage. You build it, you step inside, you decorate it, and then you call it freedom. But the longer you remain inside, the more suffocating it becomes. And eventually, the walls collapse, sometimes shattering, sometimes quietly decaying. You do not keep your beliefs. Your beliefs keep you until they fail. Even your identity is doomed. You think you are one continuous self, stretching from childhood to old age. But the self is nothing but a fragile narrative, constantly rewritten. Memory distorts, desires shift. The person you were 10 years ago would look at you now and see a stranger. The collapse of identity is constant, only hidden by the illusion of continuity. You are not one self. You are a succession of ruins, each collapse paving the way for the next. Philosophers have always whispered this truth, though most soften it with comforting words. The Buddhists called the self an illusion, teaching that clinging to it brings suffering. The existentialists called the self a project, forever unfinished, forever collapsing. Psychoanalysts called it repression, the endless crumbling of identity under pressure. And Hobbes, darker still, saw that fear governs us more than will. Fear of collapse drives us to invent selves, values, gods. But fear cannot prevent collapse. It only delays it. Look closer. Even your body collapses. Muscles weaken, organs fail, skin wrinkles, cells mutate. Every heartbeat carries you closer to the ruin of flesh. You call this aging, but it is collapse by another name. The empire of your body is falling brick by brick every day, and no belief, no discipline, no science can stop it. At best, you slow the collapse. At worst, you blind yourself until it overtakes you suddenly. Yet here is the cruelest collapse of all. Even meaning itself collapses. You may devote yourself to a cause, a career, a love, an art. You may pour decades of life into it. And yet, the moment you are gone, meaning begins to dissolve. Your words are forgotten, your actions distorted, your legacy ignored. The collapse of meaning is final. Time devours even remembrance. Every book becomes dust. Every name becomes silence. So what should you do with this? Most people flee. They double down on belief, cling harder to values, pretend their identity is solid. They shout louder to silence the cracks. But the cracks widen anyway. Collapse does not listen to prayer. Collapse does not care about effort. Collapse comes patient and merciless. The alternative is brutal but liberating. Accept collapse as law. See yourself not as fortress but as ruin in progress. Stop clinging to beliefs as if they will save you. Use them, yes. Live with them. Act through them. But do not mistake them for eternity. Know they will fall. And when they do, step into the ruins without despair. This is the secret freedom hidden inside collapse. When you know everything will fail, you stop worshiping permanence. You begin to live differently. You begin to speak with honesty, because you know even your words will collapse. You begin to act with courage because you know there is nothing to protect forever. Collapse does not paralyze you. Collapse frees you. But only if you dare to see it. Only if you can endure the truth that your identity is temporary, your values are fragile, your very self is a story waiting to crumble. Most cannot endure this. They retreat into illusions, into religions, into ideologies. They hide from collapse until it overtakes them. But those who endure, Those who stare collapse in the face become untouchable. Because when you expect the ruin, no ruin can surprise you. So I ask you, what collapse have you already survived? The death of a belief, the shattering of a relationship, the crumbling of your own self-image? Comment below with the ruins you've walked through. Subscribe if you want to keep tearing down illusions until only the raw truth remains. Like this if you've ever felt your identity crack beneath you. Share this with someone who still thinks they know who they are, and remind them, collapse is already inside them, waiting. Because collapse is not only around you, collapse is you. Collapse is not the end. Collapse is the revelation. The fall strips away illusions and shows you what was always true. Nothing lasts. Nothing is eternal. Everything you build, everything you cling to, everything you swear by, will crumble. And in that knowledge lies the only freedom worth having. Most people fear collapse because they confuse it with failure. They imagine that if their beliefs fall, if their systems shatter, if their identities dissolve, then life itself is meaningless. But collapse is not failure. Collapse is clarity. The failure is believing in permanence. The collapse is simply the truth tearing through the lie. When you accept collapse, you stop demanding eternity. You stop treating your systems, your truths, yourself as gods. You begin to live without idols. And that makes you stronger than those who still worship them. Collapse becomes not your enemy, but your teacher. It shows you that fragility is universal, that failure is guaranteed, that ruin is the final inheritance of all things. Once you know this, you cannot be deceived. Think of it like fire. Fire destroys, yes, but it also purifies. Collapse burns away illusions. It leaves ash, but also space. It clears the ground for new growth, new experiments, new truths that you can live with, not because they are eternal, but because they are useful for a time. Collapse teaches you to stop chasing forever and to start living in the temporary, to stop clinging and to start moving. This is the wisdom hidden in the ruins of history. Rome's fall did not end humanity. It cleared space for new worlds. The collapse of gods did not silence belief. It forced us to invent new ones. The fall of ideologies did not end thought. It opened philosophy to darker, truer questions. Collapse is the heartbeat of history, the pulse of transformation. To worship permanence is to worship death. To embrace collapse is to embrace life. But this acceptance demands courage. It demands that you let go of the fantasy of safety. It demands that you look at your values, your beliefs, your identity, and admit they are already falling. It demands that you step into the ruins without flinching. Most people cannot do this. They cling until the last moment, screaming as the walls collapse on top of them. But a few, very few, walk calmly through the rubble, already knowing the walls were never real. If you can do this, you gain a terrible kind of power. You no longer panic when systems fail, because you expected it. You no longer despair when truths crumble, because you knew they would. You no longer cling to permanence, because you stopped believing in it long ago. This makes you free. Not free in the childish sense of liberty without chains, but free in the darker sense of clarity without illusions. You are free because collapse cannot touch you. You already belong to it. This is what philosophers like Nietzsche meant when they spoke of amor fati, love of fate. To love not only the triumphs, but also the failures. To embrace collapse as part of existence. To say yes to decay, yes to ruin, yes even to the death of meaning. Only then are you strong enough to live without fear. Only then do you stop begging for permanence like a child clutching broken toys. Collapse is not something to resist. Collapse is something to love. So let me leave you with this. Everything you believe will fail. Every system you trust will collapse. Every identity you build will dissolve. Do not waste your life clinging to what cannot last. Use your beliefs, yes. Live with them. Act through them. But never worship them. Never mistake them for eternal, and when they collapse, as they must, do not despair. Step into the ruins and keep walking. Comment below. What belief, what system, what identity have you already watched collapse? Did it destroy you, or did it set you free? Subscribe if you want more forbidden philosophy, truths that strip away the illusions you were never meant to question. Like this, if you have ever stood in ruins and felt stronger for it. Share this with someone who still believes their world will never fall. And remind them, collapse spares no one. Because collapse is not the end of meaning. Collapse is the end of illusion. And only when the illusions are gone can you begin to live without fear.